Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's jump straight in because today we are looking at something honestly pretty fascinating. Think about the last time you enjoyed a really good glass of red wine. You were probably focused on the aroma, the flavor, maybe the vintage. But what we're exploring today is the incredible, almost invisible journey that wine takes right before it reaches you. We're talking about the reality that a raw, fermented red wine has to go through a meticulous, highly scientific finishing school before it ever hits the bottle. It's a pretty intense transformation, and honestly, understanding it completely changes how you appreciate what's in your glass.
Here is the roadmap for our wine today. We're going to start with the bottling process, move right into clarification, see how winemakers lock in that chemical structure through stabilization, apply a final physical polish with filtration, and wrap up with the final lab test.
So, Section 1, the bottling process begins. That journey from the tank to the bottle. This marks the absolute crucial transition from those massive stainless steel or oak storage tanks into the individual glass bottles we actually buy. Now, you might be wondering, is the wine in the tank ready for the bottle right now? The answer is a resounding no. Seriously, not even close. Freshly fermented red wine is essentially raw. It's full of impurities, suspended yeast, bacteria residues, and these chemical complexes that are incredibly unstable. If you bottled it right out of the fermentation tank, it would probably be cloudy, gritty, and could even spoil sitting on the shelf. It is absolutely not ready for us to drink yet.
Our ultimate goal is a perfectly clear, bright, and stable pour of red wine. To achieve that beautiful aesthetic and, actually guarantee the wine's quality and durability, that raw liquid has to go through a rigorous multi-step process. The three main pillars of this preparation are clarification, stabilization, and filtration. So let's break down exactly how winemakers actually pull this off.
Moving on to Section 2, clearing things up. This is all about clarification and removing visual impurities. Think of this phase as the wine's deep clean. The whole point here is to get rid of those visual impurities that make the wine look murky and can actually destabilize it over time. Now, winemakers basically rely on two main methods for this. First up, we've got decanting, which is spontaneous clarification. This is the slow, natural way. You literally just let the wine rest in a tank, let gravity do its thing over time, pulling the heavier solids down to the bottom. Then you carefully siphon off the clear wine from the top. But gravity isn't always enough, right? Which brings us to fining. Fining is a much more proactive approach where winemakers add specific clarifying agents directly into the wine. These agents are kind of like magnets. They chemically bind to impurities, form larger clumps, and drag them to the bottom of the tank way faster than gravity ever could on its own. What's really cool is the sheer variety of tools a winemaker has for this. Fining agents come from four main categories: animal-based, plant-based, mineral, and synthetic. And the winemaker doesn't just, pick one out of a hat. The choice depends heavily on the very specific chemical needs of that batch of wine, what kind of impurities are floating around, and the overall goals for the wine's texture and flavor. For instance, let's talk about animal and plant-based options. Traditionally, winemakers have used animal derivatives, things like gelatin, which is actually fantastic at binding to harsh tannins, or even egg whites, which smooth out the wine and drop impurities to the floor of the tank. But nowadays, to accommodate things like veganism or specific food allergies, winemakers frequently opt for plant-based proteins instead. Ingredients derived from potatoes and peas are incredibly effective at stabilizing color and grabbing those unwanted polyphenols. It's just a great example of how a very traditional process can adapt to modern consumer needs without losing any quality. But hey, the options don't stop at plants and animals. Mineral clarifiers like colloidal silica, along with synthetic agents like PVPP, are absolute workhorses in the winery. They do way more than just clear the wine of suspended particles. They actually have a positive effect on softening astringent tannins. So while they're physically cleaning the wine, they're simultaneously refining the mouthfeel, making the final product structurally so much smoother. Section 3, locking it in, stabilization. This is how we ensure the wine survives the shelf. Okay, so our wine is now clear, but clarity is really only half the battle. Once it looks visually perfect, we have to guarantee that it's chemically and biologically locked in. We need to know for sure it won't spontaneously change, turn cloudy, or worst case scenario, start fermenting again once it's sitting in your cellar. There are two primary threats here. First is the physical threat, tartaric instability. This causes potassium tartrate crystals to form in the bottle. Now, these crystals are totally harmless to drink, but they look like little pieces of broken glass or weird sediment, which obviously ruins the presentation.
The second threat is microbiological instability. This is the biological threat of unwanted bacteria and wild yeasts just waiting to spoil the wine. Both of these absolutely must be neutralized. To defeat that physical threat of the tartrate crystals, quality winemakers use a brilliant little trick called cold tartaric stabilization. They literally force the temperature of the wine down to between -4 and -2 degrees Celsius and hold it in cold storage for several weeks. Why do that? Because those freezing temperatures force the potassium tartrate crystals to form and drop out of the liquid while it's still safely in the tank. Once they settle at the bottom, the winemaker simply racks the wine, meaning they separate the clean liquid from the crystals so they will never ever form in your bottle at home. All right, but what about the microbiological stuff? To defend against bacteria and wild yeast, the winery has a whole arsenal. While cheaper bulk wines might just get heated up to destroy cell membranes, quality wines usually rely on two main defenses. The most absolutely crucial shield is the precise addition of sulfur dioxide, usually sitting around 30 milligrams per liter. SO2 is an amazing antimicrobial agent that stops yeast and bacteria in their tracks, and it acts as a powerful antioxidant. Couple that with sterilizing filtration, and you ensure the microbial environment inside the bottle is completely dormant.
Section 4. The final polish. Filtration, which acts as the ultimate physical barrier.
Even after all that fining and stabilizing, we still need one last physical sieve to catch any microscopic impurities or rogue microbes that somehow survived. This incredible physical barrier is made possible by a microbactic membrane filters. To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about here, the pores on these filters are between 0.2 and 0.45 microns. That is unfathomably small. It's so microscopic that as the wine gets pumped through, it literally physically strips yeast and bacteria right out of the liquid, letting only perfectly clean, sterile wine pass through. Winemakers actually have a few different filtration methods they can choose from. You've got earth filtration using natural diatoms, plate setups, and those membrane filters. But what's really taken off in modern wineries is tangential filtration. In this method, the liquid flows parallel to the membrane instead of just slamming directly into it. It's super popular today because it achieves total sterility in a single step, leaves absolutely no solid residues behind, and it doesn't clog up the filters nearly as fast. A real game changer.
And finally, Section 5, passing the final test. Welcome to the pre-bottling analytical lab.
So after all that clearing, stabilizing, and filtering, before a single drop of this refined wine is legally cleared to enter a bottle, it has to survive a rigorous trip to the lab. Winemaking might be an art, but bottling? Bottling is pure chemistry. These specific parameters dictate whether a wine survives the real world. The alcohol content has to hit its target. The pH generally needs to sit around 3.5, because if it creeps up near 4, the risk of oxidation and contamination skyrockets. Volatile acidity has to be kept extremely low, around 0.2 to 0.3 grams per liter, unless you want your wine turning into vinegar. They verify that free sulfur dioxide is present to act as that invisible shield. And crucially, they check that glucose and fructose are less than 4 grams per liter. That proves the fermentation is totally finished, guaranteeing your wine won't suddenly start re-fermenting and popping corks in the warehouse.
All of this brings us to a quote that perfectly sums up this entire process. Wine stabilization aims to maintain the qualities of wine, preventing this from happening spontaneously once the wine is in the bottle. Everything we just went through, the chilling, the fining agents, the microscopic filters, the lab chemistry, none of it is about changing the wine. It is an intensive scientific effort entirely designed to protect and preserve the winemaker's art exactly as intended. It's freezing it in time for you to enjoy. So, I'm going to leave you with this. Next time you pour a perfectly clear, bright, balanced glass of red wine, what hidden science will you taste? Behind every single elegant pour is a highly technical, completely invisible finishing school that brought it to perfection. I really hope this explainer gave you a whole new appreciation for that incredible journey from tank to bottle. Keep learning, keep tasting, and we'll see you next time.